our God speaks. We can't say that he doesn't if our Bibles are closed, but if they're open, we'll not only hear from God, but we'll also find him, and we'll even find his promises. Like that, even the famous ones, like, Jeremiah 29:13, 29:11. The famous one is good, but what about 2 verses later? The one that says, you will seek me and you will find me if you seek me with all your heart. Do you hear the promise? God can and will be found if we seek him. Friends, I don't know what you're expecting in this study, in this book, in your life, but if you're seeking him, there's a promise that he will be found by you. And if you find him, you'll have everything you need. But I love that verse is in the context of a God who also knows the plans. So what are we to do about the plans? You see, friends, he tells us who he is, and then he invites us to trust him. And I don't want to stand before you and tell you in a cliche way, trust God. He has good plans for your life. I too have tried to trust myself. I too have let myself down, but there's hope. There's good. There's another option, one that will not disappoint, because everything God does is meant for good. There's a little bit of context we need to understand about the people Jeremiah was writing this letter to. See, these people were exiled in Babylon. It was some punishment from some disobedience. Basically, God's people were not living expectant because they were really living disappointed. Maybe it was disappointed in themselves. Maybe it was disappointed in God. You see, God was not acting in the way they had hoped. Can you relate? By the way, how do you handle it when your expectations of how God should have acted don't come to pass? Or how about when you don't live up to the expectations you have of yourself? Have you ever said the phrase, I'm not where I should be by now? You're not crazy. Jeremiah's letter to the exiles contains God's instructions for how his people are to live while they're there. Maybe disappointed. This letter was written to those in Babylon. God wanted his people to know he does have a plan for their future, but in the meantime, even before Jeremiah 29:11, he instructs them to stay in the hard. Which is, by the way, is not what they wanted to hear. They wanted freedom from the pain. In fact, that's probably why a chapter earlier, chapter 28, they loved the word from this false prophet. What was the word from Hananiah? The word Hananiah, a false prophet, brought was, hey, God's going to fix things and it's going to be quickly and it's going to make your life easier. And everyone, of course, believed it. See, God wanted, though, something else. He actually gives them a hint in Jeremiah 29:11. Not only does he give them a hint of the plans, he also gives them hope. Why? Because he'll be found in the mess. He'll be found in the hard. He says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Again, he's not planning on telling us necessarily the plans, and we're not used to not knowing the plans. In fact, I remember when I worked with students, we did this student survey for all of our students and said, okay, we wanted to understand their lives. We figured if we did an anonymous survey, maybe they'd be honest, and they were. One of the questions we asked was, why don't you have spiritual conversations with your parents? One of the top answers was, because I Google search my questions. We're not good with not knowing. We ask Google, we ask Siri or Alexa. We simply want to know. So when we hear that God says, I know the plans, it can be very frustrating, but God wants us to know. The verse doesn't stop there. Jeremiah 29:12-14, God is inviting them and us to trust him, the one who knows the plans.